Wow, quality is not that great.
I can stick it on top of it.
No, that's not the problem. Just the lighting in here is kind of weird. Oh, now I gotta see if I can figure out. It looks like nobody's watching yet, so that's good. Let me see. Participation. Chat. Live chat. Well, we got one person on here with Mr. One Person. Can you hear me? Slow AF 12 valve. What's going on, man? Let me know if the sound is working on there to do this by myself. So hopefully the sound works. Hey, we got 5 people in here. Lagging a little bit. Cool. Let me see. The Wi-Fi's on. I have a 12 valve for a reason. I am computer challenged. All right. So far, so good for you. What's up, Buck Wild Motorsports? So before we could jump into some Q&A stuff, let some people have some time to jump on here. I will go over a couple of the questions that people dropped in the comments from the last video. So my man Johnny Trans here says or asks, what is the most used tool in the shop? For me, hold on a second, sound is in and out. I want to make sure that you guys can. All right, well, I'll keep going. If it's all cutting out and crap, just let me know and I'll stop. For me, the most used tool in my shop is definitely my Milwaukee. Pretty much anything M18 that they make is always going to get used. They're 3/8 cordless little impact driver. That's definitely what I use the most every day. Buzzing apart transmissions, pretty much anything and everything on that kind of stuff. Can you guys hear me all right? Are we here now? Okay, hopefully it stays better. So then another question I got was from my man JP. He says, he asked me like a 14-part question here. He says, when will you be releasing DIY kits? How much will they cost? What parts are included? And how long will it take the average guy to build one? Okay, so we'll go step by step on that. The DIY kits are already available. You can get them on my website. You could call me, talk about them, but they are available for purchase. The cost is depending on what level kit you want. If we're going to do an entry level or something all the way up to 800 horsepower. So cost is going to depend on the power level and the application. And that's also all on my website, getloganbuilt.com, if you want to check those out. And then same with the parts included. Of course, because these are going to be the exact same thing that I run in all my builds, you're going to get gear and valve body, gear and converter, Sonic shafts, all of the gear and billet parts, stuff like that. And then as far as how long will it take the average guy to build one, it kind of depends on if you've ever been inside a transmission before or if this is your first time. If it's your first time, it's going to take you some time. To do it right, you might spend 10, 12, 13 hours total on it, going from start to finish. If you've been in transmissions before, you might be able to knock it out in about 7 or 8 hours. So something that you're going to want to plan a whole day at least. But I'm going to be doing some step-by-step video stuff here coming soon. The only reason I haven't done it yet is because I want it to be good quality filming, and I'm still learning the filming and the edit type stuff. So I want this to be videos that people see for years and years and years, and I don't want the quality to deter people from watching the videos. And then Alan Steyer asked, what's it take to install a trans brake on a 48 RE? And also, what brakes are you running on your truck? The trans brake in the 48 RE deal is more in depth than just slapping a valve body in the transmission. The transmission has to have several components altered and set up specific to the valve body. And there's a couple different options as far as if this is more of a street truck type application, if it's a full race truck. There's some different things that goes into it. But regardless, for the trans brake stuff that I run, the transmission needs to come to me so I can properly set the rest of the transmission up and educate the customer on everything else that goes into the transmission. Everything that goes into these transmissions, there's a specific recipe for it, and all of these parts have to play nice together for everything to work properly. So if that's something that you're interested in, shoot me an email at info@getloganbuilt.com. Or hop on the website. All my contact info is on there, and holler at me, and we can talk about what you got going on. So that's the only 3 questions that I had from the last video. So now, bear with me. I'm going to go through this live chat here and start answering off your guys' questions as I see them. So I recently put together an unfinished project, which I suspect has an extremely loose torque converter. What would be the best way to test to see how loose it actually is? And yes, I can hear you. Okay, cool. Hopefully you can still hear me. That's going to really depend a lot on what your combination is and what you're doing with it. If it's a race truck and you're wanting to know, or if it's a truck that you're racing that you're going to go to the drag strip with, I like to know what kind of starting line RPM it makes and what kind of boost it makes. That's really the best way to give you a reference on stall speed. The stall speed numbers that are thrown out in the diesel world are really just kind of fake numbers. Every truck is going to act different. Every combination is going to stall a little bit different depending on the way that the turbo setup is, the fuel setup. There's not really a great answer for how do you know if your converter is too loose or not until really you get to the track, or if you have some way of getting some data on the street and seeing what kind of RPM it's leaving at what kind of boost, and what your 60-foot times are and stuff like that, to kind of gauge if you need to tighten that thing up or if sometimes you need to loosen it up a little bit. But that's where I would start, is probably getting it to the racetrack. Next question is, I have that's a statement. I have a 6.5 Chevy. I'm not one with computers either. Yep, I get it. What pistons do you recommend on a 1500 horsepower 12 valve? Okay, so I'm assuming that if you're talking 1500 horsepower 12 valve, you're talking a full race type deal. 12 valve is not a street truck. I tell people that on the street, good, nice driving 12 valve that makes a lot of power in a single application is like 850 horsepower max. Unless you're wanting to go to compounds and play around in that, which I don't have much experience with, I tell people to stop about right around the 800, 850 mark for a street truck. So assuming we're talking race only stuff, I like Diamond. You can't really go wrong with the Diamond pistons. I know that Scheid runs them pretty much exclusively now and all their stuff. I actually have Wiseco pistons in my truck. They were right when they first came out, and the reason that I went with those is because they had some sort of hardened coating ringland deal that was supposed to help protect against the ringlands getting beat out on a street driving type application. Originally, when I was building my truck, I thought that I was going to be able to street drive it. And so that was kind of my plan, was some of the way that I built some of the things on it. And so that's why I went that route. But the problem with like a Diamond piston or any of those like, forged or billet pistons or anything like that is if you street drive them, you'll wear the ringlands out on them very quickly. So if you have a street truck, man, I really like a Cummins OEM replica, a real Cummins OEM piston. If you look at a Cummins OEM piston and you set it side by side to a Molly, you can see the taper difference on the top of the Cummins piston to the first ringland. And if you're making, decent big power like that, take those Cummins pistons to a machine shop and actually taper machine that top of the piston to the steel, take a couple thousandths off of that, and then make it like 10 thousandths on each side, really make that thing shaped like a bullet. So when it gets hot and it swells up, it doesn't stick to the cylinder walls. That's something that we found out when we were doing, low buck 12 valve stuff back in the day, is the Molly pistons, man. Even if you got like the standard taper that just went down to the first ringland, those things would swell up and they get hot and they'd stick to the cylinder walls and of it. So, man, we got quite a few questions in here tonight. Are you planning on doing any videos on the DIY kits and how-to videos to build the trans? Yep, that's what we'll be coming out with that really soon. So keep on the lookout for that. Approximate cost to trans brake a 48. Good question. Also, like a lot of things with transmissions, sort of a loaded question. If you're starting fresh on a build and you want to order a transmission and you want it to have a trans brake, it could be cheap as a $500 upgrade, depending on what you want to do. If we're going to talk like aluminum drum stuff, like in a racing application, a couple other options, could cost as much as $1,500, but that's just because you're getting more parts with it. If you have a transmission currently that you're wanting to change over to a trans brake, that's usually where it costs a little bit more. We have to talk about what kind of parts you have in your transmission, what you're willing to switch to. With the gearing stuff that I run, they require that a gear-in converter is ran with their valve body. So it really just kind of depends on situation per situation. But as far as just calling me and ordering a transmission and adding a trans brake, you could get that as cheap as $500. Well, it looks like maybe continue on to the question. I make 1148 horsepower. My truck is very streetable. It is compound. Molly fly cut, big bull. Yeah, the compound stuff is where I don't have any experience really, but I would say that if I was trying to go for big horsepower on the street, definitely compounds on a 12 valve. Is the motor in your truck a wet block and head or a filled block and wet head? DFB 1990. I'm assuming you're talking to me. The block in my truck is filled, so it's a stock 5.9 block, standard bore, that shied filled, and then I do run water in the head still to keep that cool, to be able to and stuff like that. Works really good. Haven't had any issues at all with that. If I ever did another engine, I would probably just do a sleeve 6.7 and either run it totally dry or run it with water in it. But haven't had any reason to do anything different with this one. I hope I don't have to for a while. Compression connection, Mr. Tyler. Do you believe Caltrax work well on a leaf spring 2-wheel drive application? Also, any suggestion on an adjustable shock for the rear of a 2-wheel drive leaf spring application? I think Caltrax are the best thing for leaf springs in anything. The Calvert stuff is really nice. It works really well. I don't have a lot of experience on the 2-wheel drive side of stuff, but looking at like the Caltrax that's on Newman's truck, I wish they had a couple more adjustment points on the axle side, so you could basically change the spread on the axle side to kind of slow down how quickly it wants to hit the tire. And there's enough material there to where you could probably drill 1 or 2 holes. But yeah, Caltrax you can't go wrong with. And really on a leaf spring 2-wheel drive, that's, you know, pretty much a necessity if you're trying to get traction. And then as far as shocks, I just had a conversation with a guy today about shocks and leaf springs. You can spend a lot of money on shocks. So it kind of depends on what your budget is. If you're wanting to go with like a custom shock, or if you're wanting to do something that's, you know, a little bit more budget friendly. Strange has a set of just double adjustables that aren't too much money, that really would work for a wide range of people. And of course, the better shocks you have, the more control that you have over the leaf spring and of the tire. But you know, it comes at a cost, and at some point, you're still on a leaf spring. So you know, spending $2,000, $2,500 on a pair of shocks is probably not worth it, especially Tyler, for your power range. I would look into those Strange double adjustables. Dean Clark has 2 questions. I have a P24. Is it worth? I'm assuming it's 24 valve. Is it worth porting the head for 1,000 to 1,200, or just use nitrous? And is a data logging type setup worth it, or just all mechanical gauges on a strictly dirt drag truck? Anything that you're strictly racing, I'm going to answer your question from the second one up. Anything you're strictly racing, data logging is invaluable. I mean, you just can't have enough data, and you can't have too good of data. So I would say, absolutely, if your budget allows for it, get some sort of data logging on there, because the things that you will learn and the things that you will be able to learn how to keep alive will save you tons and tons of money in the long run. I'm not going to act like I'm a super smart 24 valve guy, but I can tell you that the heads are definitely more efficient than a 12 valve head. And so for 1,000 to 1,200 horsepower, if you're already willing to use nitrous, and if you have some, you know, data to where you can, I'd probably start off by not porting it, save yourself some money or some time there, and spend it on the data logging for sure. DSD boys, what are you doing to make SmartWire operate overdrive and lock up on the 47? So that's extremely simple. So the SmartWire controls power outputs. So you can control any power output with any input from a sensor. So what I like to use to shift the transmission, I like to use wheel speed, drive shaft RPM. And so basically I just have conditions set up in the SmartWire to control when the shifter shifts, and then sending power outputs to overdrive, and same deal with lockup, just doing it all based off of drive shaft RPM. You can do it on engine RPM too. It's a little bit trickier for setting up the conditions, and it's not quite as precise as drive shaft RPM. The thing I like about drive shaft RPM is as you try to go faster, you don't have to guess as much as moving your shift points up, because you're going to hit the target drive shaft RPM quicker as you're moving faster. So your shifts are going to happen more on time without having to really go in there and change it every time. I know a lot of guys like time-based shifting, and I think if you're really in tune with your setup and you're really smart about it, time-based is probably the most accurate. But every time you want to go faster, you have to take an educated guess on when that shift needs to happen. So that's why I like drive shaft RPM. Why did you go with a Precision and not something like a GTX 55? Well, that's kind of because a long time ago, so I built the header for my truck in 2016, and back in that time period, Scheid was running Precision turbos on the manifold on the dragster, and so I wanted to do a lot of the things the same way that they did things. In my opinion, they are the leaders in the 12 valve mechanical world. And so that's originally why I got a precision turbo. And then the reason that I stuck with a precision turbo, honestly, was because of how impressed I was with how it spooled and how it held up to kind of the abuse that I put it through. I've kind of been over speeding that thing, and I didn't, I kind of had a sneaking boost several times, and I really like the precision stuff. There's a lot of really fast cars in the pro mod world or in the import world that are running precision stuff, and honestly, they're a great company to work with. I just nowadays, man, I'll pick a good company to work with over somebody that might have maybe just a little bit better product. But the thing with the turbo stuff for me is like I don't really super much get into the like latest and greatest this and greatest turbo. But that wasn't really my reason for switching. My reason was to get a bigger turbine wheel and get a bigger compressor wheel. I just happened to get the latest and greatest stuff in the process. But for the diesel stuff, like we're using nitrous to do a lot of the horsepower anyways. So I don't think that we necessarily have to have the best latest and greatest turbo designs to be able to make the power. Maybe a year from now, I'll change my tone on that, but that's why I like the precision stuff. And at the time, back in 2016, they were like the only people that offered that round flange exhaust housing, and that's something that I really wanted to run. So that's why I got the precision, and I'm sticking with it because. Charles Phillips looking to street a 13 mil with a 67 85 12 valve rods girdle 58 RE build. I'm assuming you mean 48 RE build. But I'm here to learn about I'm here to learn about the 48. Are you talking about like a 58? I don't know. I'm not familiar with that, to be honest. But I'm here to learn about the 48. How much abuse does the 48 take and last with a bigger cooler? Okay, so I'm assuming you're talking about a compound setup on the 6785, unless that's a single charger that I'm not super familiar with. 13 mil pump, depending on who's built it, you can absolutely drive those on the street. A good friend of mine, Levi Plummer, had a 13. He would drive that thing like a lot. He lives like an hour from me, and he would drive it up the interstate to come visit and hang out, and he'd go street race people. So yeah, you can absolutely street drive a 13 mil. 12 valve rods, they're strong. You can make 1,000 horsepower pretty easily on a 12 valve bottom end. And then as far as the 48 goes, depending on how it's built, what parts it's built with, they can handle a lot of abuse. Assuming that you got some good stuff, you got a good builder, they can they'll last as long as you take care of it. You got to do the maintenance. You've got to make sure that you don't get them hot. Like you mentioned, the big cooler is definitely helpful. But if you keep the trans temps in check and you use it but not abuse it, they can last a really, really long time. Boosted Diesel says, when are bead locks necessary on a truck? Horsepower, weight, 60 foot. Well, I can tell you that we went 119 60 foot with no bead locks and no rim screws in JP's truck. So kind of a loaded question. Going to definitely depend on the truck. The heavier the truck, the more horsepower it makes, the more you're probably going to want to lean towards a bead lock. We were spinning the tires on the 119 60 foots, like the rim was spinning inside the tire. So it definitely was needed. But on his truck, we just put bead locks on the rear only, and we didn't do bead locks on the front. The front doesn't do that much work, so you can get away with the fronts not being bead locked. The reason that my truck is bead locked all the way around is because I started off running radials on it, and on radials you want to to definitely do a bead lock all the way around, at least a single bead lock. So just going to kind of depend on your truck. There's not necessarily a formula for like horsepower, weight, or 60 foot, but we've gone really fast without them. So you could go really fast without them too. Okay, James Neary, you said that your plan for the Fossil was to use it on the street originally. What made you go race truck? I want to build a hot street truck with an 850 cage. Is that what it is? What made me not do that? The reality of not being able to do it, really. Just the filled block, the big turbo, big single turbo, big giant injectors. Just realizing that like this is not a street drivable really setup. I did drive it a little bit on the street this last year. We drove it like 2 or 3 miles. My wife and I did to a little car show get together thing, and dude, it sucked. Like it wants to idle or it wants to make 80 pounds of boost. Like it does not want to part throttle at all. So the other thing too is just like the maintenance part of it, right? So like if I was street driving the truck, I would have to be maintaining it way, way more. And that takes a lot of time. And when you're street driving something that has like nice shocks on it and stuff like that, and like nice Heim joints and whatnot, like you're wearing that stuff out, and it's intended to be used at the racetrack. So for me, I'm committed to racing, and I'm not willing to give up the performance at the racetrack for a little bit of street time. And I don't have time to try to do the maintenance for both of them. But not saying you can't do it. You totally can. It's just for me, I want to work on the race program way more than I want to. Info is gold, Logan. Thanks. Well, thank you. I don't know if it's gold, but hopefully it'll help somebody. Deliver a ground. Correct. It will not. All you got to do is reverse the polarity of that stuff. So basically, so for reference, like the number 1 pin on a normal setup would be 12-volt power. And then 6 would be ground for overdrive, 7 would be ground for lockup. So you just will ground the number 1 pin and then send power to 6 and 7 for overdrive and lockup. So pretty much as simple as that. Dean Clark, can you run a data logger with a mostly mechanical gauge setup? Not too familiar. The data logger is going to have all of its own sensors that come with it, so you won't need any mechanical gauges. It'll have some sort of display depending on what brand you go with, and then it'll come with all of its own sensors for you to run to actually data log with. Tyler, who do you look up to in the diesel industry? Wasn't prepared for a question like this. There's a lot of great guys in the diesel industry. There's a lot of really great shops. Dan Scheid he's probably been doing it longer than anybody. He makes nice stuff. And so, from a business standpoint or from an industry, look up to kind of standpoint, I would say probably definitely Dan Scheid. From a business in the diesel industry standpoint, man, it would definitely be probably Fleece, just because of like how big that they've built themselves in such a short amount of time. And Chase Fleece and Braden Fleece and those guys are super smart. Their whole team over there. So probably those guys. Where do you think a Dana 70's limit is when you with a used ring and pinion asking for a friend? So I know you're talking about a first gen Dana 70. The pinion gear is not the problem. The diameter of the pinion in the pinion support area is the issue on those. I think knowing what you want to do with your build, I don't think you'll have any problems with what you're doing. But that's the first place of failure with a first gen Dana 70. A second gen Dana 70 has a larger pinion, and Paul Cato's been like 508 on a like stock, like Lincoln Locker welded up differential, at 4,400 pounds. So the Dana 70s are actually really strong, but on a first gen, you just got to watch that pinion. Eric Turner, you said Scheid was king of 12 valve back in the day. Who are a few people currently going fast in the 12 valve that you respect? Man, there's not many people doing the 12 valve thing. Like, to be honest with you, like there's just no, like, most of those people have jumped ship and have gone common rail, and I don't blame them. But there's just really nobody. The 24 valve mechanical stuff. Adam Foltz has the mechanical record right now. I think he went like a 521, in that truck. So like you have to respect that. But that's really the only guy that I know that's like going real fast with the mechanical stuff. I know that Severed Chad out there in California, he's gone really fast for a really budget setup 12 valve. I think he went like a 76 or a 77, 576, 577, and like with just no money. But I would say like if I could answer your question from like a point of going back a few years, Cole Dow was the one that really got me into wanting to race a first gen with his, first gen with a 12 valve in it. And that thing was super fast. It was super clean back in the day. That was probably a really big influence for me. What would you recommend for data logging setup that won't completely break? No race pack stuff. The race pack stuff will absolutely crush your bank, so I don't recommend it for that. From what I've heard from people is that the AEM data logger is a really good data logger for the money type of deal. So I would probably maybe look into that one. What frame paint is on yours and Newman's truck? I was watching the axle swap video and I love the way the frame paint turned out. So that is some stuff that we get from a local company called KOI, which is Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana. It's a parts store that sells paint stuff. My dad does body work for a living. He's done it his whole life. And so it's a single stage paint, and it's cheap. I don't know what it is, now. We've bought that stuff a while ago. A gallon, $30 or $40 for the hardener. And so $150, and you can pretty much paint your whole frame with it. And it holds up really good too, and it lays down nice and has a nice finish, and it's much easier than base coat, clear coat for painting a frame. Can you speak on what happened with the Dow brothers as far as are they done with racing? Corey's not, or I'm sorry, Cole isn't. He is a drag race. Dow Brother Race Cars is still in business. It's just Cole now, probably since like 2017-ish, sometime in there. And Cole works on a bunch of high profile stuff. He works on Bodie's cars, if you guys are familiar with like Street Outlaws and No Prep Kings and stuff. So yeah, Cole is still full force at it. Corey, he started a business with a water truck, and he makes way more money doing that than playing with race cars. So last time I heard from Corey, that's what he's doing. And you need 60 psi to pump. Did you dual feed the pump? That question's not to me. Make sure. I think that's about it so far. Well, it seems like you guys like this Q&A stuff. Kind of surprised that there's, as many of you guys in here watching and asking questions. So if this is something that you guys like, we can make it a monthly occurrence if you guys want to. But looks like that's about it for the questions. If you guys got any last minute, if not, maybe we'll plan on doing this again at the end of March if something you guys like. And then for anybody that is going to be watching this secondhand, or if somebody that's missed this deal, once I end this, it'll upload, and then once it uploads, it'll be where you can go and search this video. So you'll be able to go through and read through all these comments and stuff again. But you got to just go to the live section on my channel, and then if you want to see the live comments, you just have to click on live chat. So, all right, any takers? Any last questions, or have I spent 36 minutes boring everybody to death? Oh, there was one question that I missed on Alan Steyer's. What brakes are you running on your truck? Dual caliper per wheel, 4-piston, and then the front I have dual caliper per wheel, Will Woods, and those are also 4-piston as well. So I have a lot of stopping power on my truck, and then I just run the Will Wood master cylinder as well, kind of just because I like the way that one looked. But after dealing with the Lamb stuff on Newman's truck, one day I'm going to switch over to the Lamb brakes because that stuff's really top notch. Okay, we're going to call this the last question. What RPM? That depends on the converter that I'm running, the turbo, stuff like that. But I can tell you that let's just say like at the end of last year, I was launching somewhere between 3,200 and 3,300, depending on what the track would take that day. The new combo, I should be able to leave with more RPM for the same given boost. So I'm hoping to leave around 36, 3,700 on that one, and then I shifted at about 5,200 is about the max. Really much beyond that, fall off quick, but it starts losing power. You can see it in the G meter; it starts falling off. So I like to leave with a bunch of RPM, get it out of that torque range, and get it through first gears as quick as possible. Try to make it 60 foot, as best as it can. Eric Turner, if you're asking me your thoughts are to make it go faster, if you're open to it, yeah, for sure. Shoot me an email or hop on my website, and my phone number and all that stuff's on there. And yeah, I always love to talk about stuff like that. Thanks for taking the time to make a Q&A. I'll be sure to save up some questions for the next one. Cool. Well, guys, I appreciate it. I'm going to cut it here because I don't think anybody's going to watch a 40-minute video. So I'm going to end it, and we will catch you guys on the next one. I've got a couple of videos coming out tomorrow. I fixed the nitrous issue on the Fossil, so that video will be coming out tomorrow, and then Thursday we'll be doing spool ups, and if everything goes well, I'll have that video posted Thursday as well. So I'm going to figure out how to end this deal, and I'll talk to you guys later.